Hey guys, welcome back to another RAS Game Master tutorial, and in this tutorial I'm going to be teaching you some different ways of factoring quadratics. So factoring quadratics is it's one of the most important areas of maths since quadratics come out absolutely everywhere, but they're also quite difficult, especially when it's non-monic, which I'll explain now. So a monic quadratic is one where the x squared term doesn't have a coefficient, or just coefficient is just 1. So for example, this would be x squared plus 7x plus 10. And let's say we wanted to factorize this. Well, the way that I've been taught how to do this, and I think the way you should learn for speed, is to first write out the factors of this term, or specifically the coefficient of this term. So we would get just 1 and 1, since there's only one way to make 1. And then we write out the factors of this term. So there's different factors, but try and pick the most obvious one. It usually works. So 5 and 2 is pretty obvious. And from there, all we want to do is we want to use a cross method. So we're going to cross things, and you want to product the cross. So the product of this cross is going to be 5, and the product of this cross is going to be 2. And you want the sum of these to be equal to whatever this term is. So in this case, it's 7, which works. So therefore, this is a valid cross. Let me show you an example of an invalid cross. Let's say we had 1 and 1 for the coefficients here. And then for the factors of these, we picked, let's say we picked 10 and 1. So the product of this cross is going to be 10. The product of this cross would be 1. When you sum them, you get it's equal to 11, which isn't 7, since that's what we're trying to get. So therefore, this is an invalid cross. Okay, once you have a valid cross, it's really easy to make the factors, because all we're going to do is we're just going to put brackets around these and add in the x terms as well. So in this case, the brackets would be x plus 5 and x plus 2. And there we go. We've factored this quadratic into its two factors. So you can obviously test this. I'll just expand this just to show you guys what it looks like. We get x squared plus 5x plus 2x plus 10, which simplifies to x squared plus 7x plus 10. So there we go. Now let me show you another example of a monic quadratic using the cross method. Let's say we have something like x squared plus 5x, or x squared minus 5x actually. Let's do x squared minus 5x plus 4 is equal to 0. And now all we have to do is, let's write factors of this again. It's just 1. And factors of this, which when we multiply them by these factors 1, they're going to sum to minus 5. So there's loads of factors of 4. Maybe we'll try 2 and 2. However, you'll notice when we cross these, the sum of these is going to be 4. So this is invalid. Let's try another cross. 1, 1, 4 and 1. And you'll see the sum of these ones, this is equal to 5, which isn't minus 5. We need to remember the sign. So this is also invalid. So can you think of any other factors of 4 which are going to sum to minus 5? And yeah, you might have noticed, if we do minus 4 and minus 1, the product of these is going to be 4. But when we cross, we get... When we cross, we get minus 4 and minus 1. And when we add these together, you get minus 5, which is what we're looking for. So therefore, this is the valid cross. Once we have the valid cross, we simply convert it to brackets by using the coefficient. So this is the coefficient of the x term, x, and the minus 4, and x minus 1. And there's our answer. This is the factorized form of the quadratic x squared minus 5x plus 4. x squared, x minus 4 times x minus 1. So there we go. Monic quadratics, pretty simple because you can just look at the factors of this and then try and see which ones sum to this term. Those are pretty simple. It gets a little complicated at the non-monic stage. So I'll show you an example of that right now. Let's say we have 2x squared plus 5x plus 2 is equal to, not equal to 0. We'll just try and factorize this. Okay, so now let's do the same thing, but we're going to write out the factors of this term, which is going to be 2 and 1. So notice how it's not 1 and 1 anymore. And then the factors of this term. So it might be 2 and 1 again. Now we do the cross check again. So cross that, multiply. So we get 2, 2. And when you sum those, you get 4, which isn't 5. So this is an invalid cross. Now, remember, order actually matters as well. So since we're crossing, we can switch the order and it might give us a different term. So let's try that. Let's keep the first one as 2 and 1 and keep the second term, switch the order around. So with this cross, we're now going to get 1 and 4. And when we sum these, you actually do get 5, which is what we're looking for. So there we go. We managed to find a valid cross, and from here, it's the same sort of thing, because all we have to do to put this into factored form now is take the coefficient of the x squareds, or just the x, which becomes 2x plus 1, and same thing for the second row, slash bracket, you get x plus 2, and there's the answer. Factored form of 2x squared plus 5x plus 2 is this. So this might look like trial and error, and it is, but with a lot of practice, you can actually become very fast, and this is a much faster method than the next one, which I'm going to show you is, the next method is simply just to solve the equation using the quadratic formula. So, for example, let's take x squared minus 5x plus 4 is equal to 0. Now to solve this, we can use the quadratic formula. X is equal to minus b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a. So we can get x is equal to 5 plus or minus the square root of 25 minus 16 over 2, which is 5 plus or minus the square root of 9, which is 3 over 2, which becomes 8 over 2 and 2 over 2, which becomes 4 and 1. So these are solutions for x. And now with these solutions, remember how we work out these solutions from the factored form is to set each bracket equal to 0. So that way, let's do this in reverse. We know x is equal to 4. So with that equation, we want to get 0 on one side. So we get x minus 4 is equal to 0. And we also get or x equals 1. So therefore, x minus 1 equals 0. And then put it into factored form, we just have to combine these brackets into x minus 4, x minus 1. This is all right, because if you really struggle to find it, you can just solve it, but it's usually not an option because you usually factor to solve the equation. Generally, if you have to solve it like this, then it's usually a really large equation. But yeah, another problem is if it's non-monic, then you also have to worry about this a term, because even if you have the solutions, for example, the solutions of this is x equals minus 1/2 and x equals minus 2, that doesn't mean the bracket is going to be x plus 1/2 and x plus 2, since we also need to remember the a term over here. So we can just add it in over there, 2 at the start, and then we can distribute this into whichever bracket we want. So yeah, that's another way of factorizing quadratics, is simply solve them and then put them back into their brackets. But I wouldn't recommend that way. I definitely recommend trying to master the cross method if you can, since it's a much faster way once you've mastered it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in a future tutorial. Bye.